Hi guys, welcome back to the Cornish Angler. I'm currently sat at my local reservoir doing a little bit of dead baiting for some pike. It's a bit of an off the cuff session. I wasn't planning on being here. I'm actually going sea fishing later on this evening with Nate, but I finished work at 12 o'clock, had a few hours to kill. So I quickly popped home, grabbed a load of gear, chucked it in the van and got down here as quick as I could. I've only got about 2 hours of fishing time, so I got the rods out straight away before I got the camera out, just so I can make the most of that 2 hours. So in a bit I'll go through my rigs, my tactics, my setups in a bit more detail, but basically I've got 3 rods out, all fishing, slightly different tactics, hoping I can pick off a fish over the next 2 hours. So I'll go into those tactics a lot more detail a bit later on in this video. For now though, I'm going to get a couple more rigs baited up in case I do get a fish, so I can quickly recast the rods, have a bit of a tidy up, and I'll go through all my rigs and tactics for today. So as you can see, I've got 3 rods out. The rod on the floor is on a float fish setup. On the middle rod, I've got a drop-off indicator, but unfortunately I couldn't find my second one, so on the third rod I'm actually using a bobbin. That rod is a bit closer in. I'm just paying a bit more attention to that rod as well. But I've got the clutch set, so literally any tap on the rod and some line will peel off and give me some indication on the bite alarm. So the swim I've chosen for this short little session is at the dam end of the reservoir. There's a couple of reasons for that. The main one is my van is just a few yards down behind me there, which means I've got the most amount of time to fish for. I could have traipsed up further up the bank here or on the other side, but it would have taken me a good half an hour, and that's half hour to get there, half hour to get back, and I've lost an hour of fishing time. Well, I've only got maybe 2.5 hours to play with anyway. I've also dead baited in this swim a couple of times before. I have hooked into a couple of fish and lost them. I've had 5 or 6 other runs as well. Well, unfortunately I haven't actually hooked into the fish. So I know it's got a bit of form down here. It's the deeper end of the reservoir, so I reckon in this colder weather the bait fish are more likely to hold up down here, and hopefully the pike are holding up down here as well. And one of the other main reasons is it's pretty weed free in this area. As you know, if you've watched my other videos, the further you go down to the opposite end of the reservoir, the weedier it gets. And I just want to know over these next 2 hours my rigs are fishing effectively, not worrying that they're all tangled up in weed. I've got the wind coming from behind me, so from the dam end down towards the island end. So I've got a float set up on the left hand side, which means that float can just drift along and cover a bit of water that way. The other 2 rods are on ledger setups, so obviously a bit more of a static approach, but I will twitch those every 10 minutes or so, gently bring them back into me. I've had before where I've slowly retrieved the dead baits, and on the way in a pike has tried to nab them. So I'll definitely be doing that. And like I said, I've only got a couple of hours, so I'll try and make the most of it by staying nice and active. It's actually time to bring the float setup in now, so let's take a look at how I've set that up. Right, so I'm just retrieving this float setup, and all I'm doing is a couple of turns of the reel and let the bait sit again, just for 5 seconds or so. Bring it in again, and it just gives a chance for any pike that might have been intrigued by the bait, looking at the bait, to go and attack it as I retrieve it in. But nothing happened that time, but always worth doing just in case. Right, let's have a look at this float setup. So starting at the top, I've got a little float stop. Okay, that helps me set the depth I want to fish at, so I can slide that up and down my braided line. I'm going to start at 6 foot. If nothing happens, I can easily change that to 3, 4, 5 foot, or higher up, 7, 8 foot if I want to. I can just mess around with that until I can find some fish. I've then got a little black bead, and that's just to stop the float from going past the float stop there. Coming further down, got another bead which is to protect the float against the weight, and I've got another bead again to protect the weight against the swivel. Okay, the swivel has got a clip on the end, which means I can quickly change my wire trace if I want to. It might be I've got a fish in the net, so I can just quickly take that wire trace off and deal with the fish, or I do bait up other spare rigs, so I can quickly change that Just means I've got more time fishing. I'm not messing around on the bank so much. Get the bait in the water for as long as possible. I've then got a nice long wire trace coming down to the hook bait. So I've got a size 6 treble hook. These two hooks here are barbless. The hook that goes through the stick on this kebab rig is barbed. Got a little bait flag on there, and the barb with the bait flag just helps to stop the hook coming off the stick. On the stick itself, I've got a mixture of mackerel, sardine, smelt, basically all bits of fish I've either chopped up or not used. Goes into the freezer. It's nice and oily, gives a nice scent off, and it's just a good way of using bait up rather than just chucking it away. So that's it, really simple. So I'm just going to cast that out to the left hand side and let the winds just gently push that down to my left hand side, which should mean it covers a bit more water and hopefully find some pike. Let's get it back out there. So a couple of little tips if you're using the kebab rigs. One is at the end of the session, I'll chop up any bait that I might throw away. I'll stick it on the stick and I'll put it in the freezer. So I've actually got 3 or 4 of these made up already. Just means they're ready to go when I need them. Don't even mess around on the bank. Again, it just saves you money, saves you throwing bait away. You might have just chucked that in the lake or chucked it in the bin. And the way I do this is I always thread on the bigger bits of bait first, and then slowly decrease the size of the bait as it goes up. So you almost got like a triangle shape going up. And that's simply because I don't want a massive piece of fish at the top, because that's going to mask the hook more. Okay, so always have your smaller bits of bait towards where your hook is. So next time I bring in the float rod, I can quickly take off the other kebab rig and stick this on within a minute and get it back out there. So again, just maximizing your time on the bank. Right, so this is the setup on the middle rod. So just a ledger setup. So it's got my main braid on the right hand side here. And coming down off that is a boom. Okay, so I'll bring it a bit close to the camera. So got a ring there and a little trace coming from that. A little poly ball at the top, which just basically keeps your line from getting snagged up from anything on the bottom. Coming down to a nice big lead, that's a 4-ounce lead. Okay, the reason for that is I don't want the lead to move if a pike picks up the bait. If it's like a 1-ounce, 2-ounce lead, there's a chance that that lead can actually get moved when the pike picks it up. But now, especially because it's so silty out there, that big 4-ounce lead will plunge into the silt and it's not going to move if a pike picks up the bait. Now I haven't got any beads big enough to stop that loop there going through my swivel, so I'm actually using an old poly ball. Now there's another guy who fishes down here called Paul. He's got a channel called PT's Gets Hooked, and he recommended I use this because I was actually just using a bit of plastic, but he said why don't you use a poly ball, which will just be a bit safer to use than a bit of plastic. So thanks Paul, that's a good shout. And I've got a bead between the poly ball and my swivel just to protect it against the swivel there. Again, my swivel's got a clip on, so I can take my wire trace on and off really quickly. Okay, it's actually running the ledger setup. Now, because I know there's no weed out there, I'm fishing this dead bait on the bottom. I know it's not going to get caught up in any weed. Okay, so this is just a little perch dead bait that you can buy frozen. Obviously, there's a lot of perch in here. I've had takes on roach and rudd, and to be honest, I was a bit limited on what bait I had in the freezer. I only had a few perch left, so that's why I'm using this hook bait. 2 trebles in there, one at the top by the tail, one a little bit further down from the head. Don't want it too close to the head because then more chance of deep hooking the pike. The 2 hooks that are proud on the hook bait, they're barbless. Just squeeze the barb on that. But the hook that's actually in the fish itself has still got the barb on, just to add that extra bit of grip and and help stop the hook from coming off from the fish. A little bit of bait elastic on there as well, again, just to help keep the hook bait on. So really simple. Let's get that cast back out there. What an idiot. Well, it's about to redo that rod anyway, luckily. What an idiot. Right, try it again. Try and sink that line quickly. Right, and seeing as I've messed up that cast and got my other rod caught up, let's bring that one in and I'll show that rig as well. Right, so I'll do the same thing here. Just going to draw it back a little bit, let the bait settle, and just see if it intrigues the pike to come and take the bait before I reel it all the way in. Right, a similar setup on the right hand rod. Again, got that running ledger system, so that's exactly the same. The only difference of this setup is down at the bait end of the rig. Okay, so get a nice long wire trace. This bait does need changing, but I'll show you whilst it's on here. So that's about half a smelt I've got on there, and I've got little pop-ups at the top end of the fish there. Okay, again, 2 treble hooks. It's all a bit mashed up. That bait needs changing. Now in weedy conditions, I'll just let that pop up out of the weed. But because I know it's clear out there, mainly, what I've done, I've put a row of shot weight, probably 5 inches away from the bait there. Okay, I've tested this in the margin, so the idea is we're just popping the bait off 5 inches off the deck. Okay, so it's not popped up high, it's not on the deck, it's just going to be wafting around 5 inches or so off the bottom. And hopefully that wafting around will, 1, just get a bit more attraction out there, and 2, be a bit more visual for the pike to home in on. What I'll do, I'll drop that in the margin now so you can see what it looks like. And if I just drop my bait there, you'll see it's sinking under the water, but it's not on the bottom, it's popped up. Obviously right now there's a gap between the polyball and the bait, which won't be there when I put on a new bait. That will be tight against the bait itself. And yeah, any bit of current, anything that goes past, just going to waft that bait around. It's sitting proud, the hooks are sitting proud. And what it also allows me to do is fish from different depths. So I've got a bait that's tight on the bottom, I've got one that's just popped off the bottom, and I've got the float rig, which is 6 foot under. So I think it's probably about 12 foot out there, so 6 foot off the bottom. Right, my drop off indicator has just dropped off. I had a little bit of line peeling, but it stopped as I was getting the camera on. So I'm just going to give it a second to see if the fish does run with it. If not, I'll hit it anyway, just in case the pike is sat there with a bait in its mouth. In one of my other videos, I'm using an underwater camera, and a pike picks up the bait and it literally stays there for 2 minutes without moving before it eventually starts swimming off. So if you do get a pickup, even if the line's not peeling off, pick up your rod, just feel for a bite for 30 seconds and then lift in, see if you've got a fish on the end, because 2 things might happen. 1, you might deep hook the pike by leaving it too long, or the pike might just let go of the bait and you've missed your chance. So nothing else has happened, but I am gonna make sure my drag's nice and tight, reel down, lift up, and no, nothing's there. Well, I'll just let it drop for a second, just in case the pike is still in the area, because that bit of movement might entice the pike to go for that bait again. Oh, it does feel like it. What's going on there? Felt like I had a few little touches again then. Let's do that again. No, I think whatever it was is gone. Can't see any bite marks on there. Well guys, it's time for me to pack up now and head off sea fishing for the evening. I've had no further action on the rods, just had those few little indications earlier, but that was as good as the action got. But it was always a case of being more hopeful than expecting to get a fish in the few hours I got. And on days like this, it's just nice to be out on the bank. The fish are just a welcome bonus. Before I do go though, I've got the exciting announcement as to who's won the AliExpress pike fishing setup. If you haven't watched that video already, go and check it out. But basically, I set myself a challenge of trying to buy an entire pike fishing lure setup for under 70 quid on AliExpress and go and try and catch some fish on it. I then gave all my subscribers the chance to win that entire setup. Thank you to everyone who entered by commenting in that video, make me a winner. Unfortunately, there can only be one winner, and that winner is Solid Drew 3001. Well done to you. I'll tag you in this video. Hopefully you see it. Please get in touch and we'll find a way of getting all that posted up to you. What would also be brilliant if you end up using that setup, send me some photos of any fish you land. It'd be great to see what you catch of it. And like I said, thank you to everyone who did enter that competition. Sorry you couldn't all win, but I have got 2 other competitions lined up soon. So I'll have an entire feeder fishing setup and also a surface fishing setup as well. Both of those I'll do in springtime, so keep an eye out for those competitions. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you guys again soon.